Captain Alina Santos stood at the observation deck of the EES Horizon, watching as the mysterious planet Kepler 247 grew larger in view. The murky atmosphere swirled with sickly yellow clouds, concealing whatever lay beneath. This was supposed to be a routine survey mission, but the strange energy signatures they detected had changed everything. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Marcus Chen's voice crackled through the intercom. "Our deep scans are showing." "Well, you should just come look." Elena made her way to the science bay, where Marcus hunched over his console, his face illuminated by holographic displays. The readings showed scattered pockets of civilization, or what remained of one, crumbling structures, degraded power signatures, and most surprisingly, life signs. "How did we miss this?" Elena asked, leaning closer to study the data. "This system's been charted before." "That's the thing, Captain," Marcus replied, pulling up historical survey records. "According to the Galactic Database, this planet was marked as uninhabited centuries ago. But these structures, they're ancient. Someone's been here all along." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Prepare a landing team. Full environmental gear. Whatever's down there, they've been forgotten by the galaxy for a reason." The descent through the turbulent atmosphere rattled their shuttle, but pilot Sarah Patel handled it with characteristic skill. As they broke through the cloud layer, Elena's breath caught in her throat. Below them stretched the ruins of what must have once been a magnificent city. Now most of the structures were half buried in rust-colored sand, their surfaces eaten away by centuries of acid rain. They landed in what appeared to be a central plaza, the cracked stone beneath them still bearing traces of intricate patterns. Elena led her team out, their environmental suits' sensors immediately beginning to analyze the hostile atmosphere. "Oxygen levels at 12%, Dr. James Morrison reported, checking his readings. "Heavy metal contamination. Acid content in the air would be lethal without protection. This place is dying." "Movement," Lieutenant Rosa Martinez whispered over the comm. 3 o'clock, behind that fallen column." Elena turned slowly, raising her hands in a universal gesture of peace. From behind the ruins, figures emerged. Tall, painfully thin beings with translucent skin that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. Their large, dark eyes reflected an intelligence tempered by suffering. One of them stepped forward, wearing what appeared to be a ceremonial robe made from salvaged materials. The universal translator in Elena's suit worked to process their language. "I am Vea." The being's words came through as a whisper. "Have you come to take what little remains?" The question struck Elena like a physical blow. "No," she replied firmly. "We're explorers from Earth. We didn't know anyone was here." Vea's expression shifted subtly. "Many know we are here. None choose to see." More of the beings emerged from hiding, each showing signs of malnutrition and exposure to their toxic environment. Elena counted perhaps 30 in total, though their nearly transparent skin made them difficult to track. "How long?" Elena asked, dreading the answer. "Since the Great Abandonment. 8 generations," Vea replied. "The others came, took what they wanted from our world, left us to fade. We were deemed inefficient, unworthy of assistance." Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his medical scanner humming. "Captain, their cellular structure is breaking down. The environmental damage is affecting them at a genetic level. Without intervention." He left the implications hanging. Elena looked at her team, then back at Vea. In that moment, she made a decision that would change the course of human history in the galaxy. "We're not leaving," she stated, her voice firm. "Not while your people are suffering. Earth doesn't abandon those in need." Vea's large eyes blinked slowly. "Others have made such promises." "We're not others," Elena replied, removing her helmet in a gesture that made her team gasp. The air burned her lungs, but she forced herself to take a breath, to show trust. "We're human, and humans help." As she replaced her helmet, coughing, Vea approached her. The alien's hand reached out, touching Elena's faceplate with surprising gentleness. "Perhaps," Vea whispered, "you are different after all." Elena activated her ship-wide comm. "Horizon, this is Santos. Begin immediate preparation for humanitarian aid deployment, and get me a direct line to Earth Command. We're going to need everything they can send." As her team began setting up emergency shelters and medical stations, Elena looked at the dying sky above them. She knew this wouldn't be easy. Earth was still finding its place in the galactic community, still proving itself to the older races. But if humanity couldn't show compassion in the face of suffering, what good was their advancement into the stars? The rest of that day was spent documenting the Kepler survivors' needs and establishing basic aid stations. As night fell, casting the ruins in deep purple shadows, Elena watched Vea's people helping her crew distribute emergency rations and medical supplies. This was just the beginning. There would be resistance from the galactic community, bureaucratic obstacles, and the immense challenge of saving not just a people, but their entire world. But as Elena watched a human doctor gently treating a Kepler child's radiation burns, she knew they had made the right choice. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, not to conquer, not to exploit, but to help those abandoned by others. And Elena Santos had just fired the first shot in a very different kind of revolution. A holographic projection of Admiral Chen flickered in Elena's quarters aboard the Horizon, his expression grave. "The Galactic Assembly has officially filed a protest against our presence on Kepler 247. They're calling it an unauthorized intervention in a designated restricted zone." Elena fought to keep her voice steady. "With all due respect, Admiral, they left these people to die. The Kepler system was marked as uninhabited to cover up their abandonment." "I know, Captain, but we're dealing with races that have been establishing galactic policy for millennia before we left Earth's atmosphere. The Arcturus delegation is particularly vocal about our removal, because they're the ones who stripped this world bare 3 centuries ago," Elena replied, pulling up the historical data they'd recovered from Vea's archives. "They took everything of value and left the Keplers to suffer the consequences." The Admiral's hologram sighed. "The Assembly's sending a delegation. They'll arrive within the week. Until then, maintain your position, but don't do anything to escalate the situation." The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. Outside her window, the work continued. In the 2 weeks since their arrival, the Horizon's crew had established a substantial base of operations. Medical tents dotted the ancient plaza, while atmospheric processors worked to create breathable zones within the ruins. The Kepler survivors, properly known as the Zayari, they'd learned, were already showing signs of improvement under proper care. "Captain," Lieutenant Martinez's voice came through the comm, "you should come to the medical bay. Dr. Morrison has found something." In the makeshift hospital, James Morrison stood over a series of genetic scans, his face pale. "Their DNA is remarkable," he said as Elena entered. "The Zayari have an unprecedented ability to adapt to environmental changes. That's how they survived this long. But look at this." He pulled up another scan, showing strands of DNA being systematically broken down. The toxins in their environment aren't just killing them, they're being targeted. This was engineered. Elena felt her blood run cold. "You're saying someone designed this? The atmospheric degradation, the soil contamination. It's all too precise. Someone wanted to make sure that if they couldn't have this world's resources, no one could. They just didn't count on the Zayari's resilience." A soft voice spoke from behind them. "We knew." Vea stood in the doorway, her translucent skin showing the faint tracery of failing organs beneath. "Our ancestors tried to tell others, but none would listen. It was easier to forget us." Before Elena could respond, alarms blared through the compound. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, we've got multiple ships entering the system. They're not waiting for the week. The Assembly delegation is here now." Elena rushed to the command center they'd established in one of the restored buildings. The holographic display showed 5 ships, each bearing the marks of different assembly races. Their weapons weren't armed, but their positioning was clearly meant to intimidate. "Open a channel," Alina ordered, straightening her uniform. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to an Arcturian, his crystalline features arranged in an expression of practiced diplomacy. "Captain Santos, I am Delegate 66. You are in violation of Assembly Directive 147. Non-interference with designated restricted zones. You will cease all operations and withdraw immediately." Alina felt Vea move to stand beside her. "Delegate, we are providing humanitarian aid to survivors of a genocide. Earth does not recognize the authority of any directive that demands we abandon sentient beings to death." "These beings," Zixix said, his tone dismissive, "were deemed non-viable by Assembly assessment 3 centuries ago. Their continued existence is unfortunate, but irrelevant to galactic concerns." "Irrelevant." Alina's voice cut through the transmission like a blade. "Let me show you irrelevant." She nodded to Lieutenant Chen, who transmitted the medical data they'd gathered. "Your peoples poisoned this world and its inhabitants, left them to die slowly while marking their world as uninhabited. On Earth, we have a word for that: genocide." The Arcturian's features sharpened. "Choose your next words carefully, Captain. Earth's position in the Assembly is not yet secure." "Neither is your secret," Alina replied. "Every moment we're here, we're documenting everything. The engineered toxins, the deliberate abandonment, the cover-up. How do you think the younger races in the Assembly would react to learning this truth? The ones who still believe in your leadership?" A tense silence filled the command center. Alina could feel her crew holding their breath, could sense Vea's quiet strength beside her. "You play a dangerous game, Captain Santos," Zixix said finally. "Very well. You have 1 standard month to conclude your humanitarian mission. Then you will leave, and things will return to their natural order." The transmission cut off. Alina turned to Vea, whose large eyes held a mixture of fear and hope. "1 month isn't enough," Alina said. "But it's time to show them exactly what humanity can do when we're told something's impossible." She activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. We got 1 month to save a civilization. Let's make it count." As her crew burst into action around her, Alina looked at the assembly ships looming in orbit. They'd bought some time, but she knew this was just the beginning. The real fight for the Zyari's future and humanity's soul was still to come. Looking at Vea, she saw the same determination reflected in the aliens' ethereal features. They had 1 month to change the course of history. It would have to be enough. 20 days remained before the Assembly's deadline, and the ruins of the Zyari city had transformed into a hub of desperate innovation. Captain Alina Santos stood in what they dubbed the Innovation Center, watching humans and Zyari work side by side, racing against time. Dr. Morrison burst into the room, his eyes bright with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this." He led Alina to a laboratory where several Zyari children played in what appeared to be a sealed garden chamber. "Watch their skin." Alina observed as the children moved through beams of filtered sunlight. Their translucent skin seemed to shimmer, taking on a healthier, more opaque appearance. "What am I looking at, James?" "Their photosynthetic abilities," he explained. "The Zyari don't just adapt to their environment, they transform it. These children are literally processing the toxins in their bodies and converting them into energy. We didn't see it before because the contamination levels were too high, but in this controlled environment, they're healing themselves," Alina finished, understanding dawning. Lieutenant Sarah Patel joined them, carrying a tablet filled with atmospheric data. "That's not all, Captain. The Zyari's ancient records show they once had a planetary defense system, not weapons, but environmental regulators. The entire planet was designed to be self-healing, just like them. But the Arcturians destroyed it when they stripped the planet," Alina said, pieces falling into place. "Not destroyed," came Vea's ethereal voice. The Ziyari leader emerged from the shadows, moving with more strength than Alina had seen before. Dormant. The core systems lie deep beneath our sacred mountains. We lack the power to restart them, but perhaps. Alina turned to Sarah. Could we adapt our ship's power systems? With modifications, yes. But Captain, powering up a planetary system with our resources, it would mean shutting down all non-essential systems on the horizon. We'd be trapped here if anything went wrong. Elena watched the Ziyari children playing, their laughter a sound that had become more common in recent days. Do it. The next week was a blur of activity. The Horizon's engineering team, led by Chief Engineer Raj Kapoor, worked around the clock to modify their power systems. The Ziyari shared their ancient knowledge, revealing hidden tunnels beneath the ruins that led to vast chambers filled with dormant machinery. It's beautiful, Raj breathed, examining the intricate designs. Their entire civilization was built on harmony with their environment. These machines don't force change. They encourage natural healing processes. Elena touched one of the ancient panels, feeling a faint vibration beneath her fingers, like the Ziyari themselves. They never developed weapons or conquest technology because they were focused on sustainability and growth, which made them easy targets, Sarah added bitterly, working on power connections. As they worked, more Ziyari emerged from hiding, drawn by hope for the first time in generations. They shared stories of their past, of a civilization that had once spread across their world in cities that floated on air currents and drew power from the natural energy of their planet. 10 days before the deadline, they were ready to attempt activation. The Horizon hung silent in orbit, all its power diverted to the surface. Elena stood with Vea in the central chamber, surrounded by both their peoples. Your ship, Vea said softly, you risk everything. Not everything, Elena replied, just machinery. The real risk would be standing by and doing nothing. The activation sequence began. Ancient machinery hummed to life, powered by human technology and guided by Ziyari wisdom. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the ground beneath them trembled. Energy readings are off the scale, Marcus reported from his station. The system is. It's talking to the planet somehow. Through their monitors, they watched in awe as a wave of change spread from the mountains. The toxic yellow clouds began to shift, breaking apart as new energy patterns emerged. Where the wave touched, plants long thought dead began to stir. The Ziyari around them began to glow, their bodies resonating with the planetary energy. Vea raised her arms, her voice joining with others of her kind in a haunting song that seemed to pulse with the planet's new rhythm. The atmospheric toxins are being neutralized, James announced, checking his readings. The Ziyari aren't just healing themselves, they're healing their entire world. Elena felt tears in her eyes as she watched the transformation beginning around them. But a warning alarm cut through their celebration. Captain, Marcus called out, assembly ships are entering the system. They're ahead of schedule. Vea touched Elena's arm, her skin now glowing with a healthy light. They come to stop us. No, Elena said firmly. They come to witness what cooperation and compassion can achieve. Open a channel to all ships and make sure our sensors are recording everything. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity and the Ziyari can do together. As the assembly ships drew closer, the surface of Kepler 247 continued to transform. The Ziyari's song grew stronger, echoing through the ancient chambers as their world began to heal. And humanity stood with them, proving that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in weapons or power, but in the simple choice to help those in need. The assembly fleet materialized in Kepler's orbit like a gathering storm. 7 ships now, not just the original 5, their hulls gleaming with technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities. Elena stood on the Horizon's bridge, watching as they took up attack positions. They're charging weapons, Lieutenant Martinez reported, her voice steady despite the tension. But they haven't targeted us yet, Marcus added. They're holding position. Elena nodded. Put the transformation data on all channels. Let them see exactly what they're about to stop. The holographic displays filled with images from the surface. The Ziyari's ancient environmental system was working faster than anyone had predicted. Already, patches of healthy soil were spreading outward from the activation sites. The toxic atmosphere was being processed and purified by both the machinery and the Ziyari themselves, their unique biology amplifying the healing effect. The main communication screen flared to life. Delegate Zixix appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Representatives from 6 other assembly races flanked him, their expressions ranging from outrage to curiosity. Captain Santos, Zixix's crystalline features were sharp with anger. You were ordered to withdraw, not escalate your interference. Interference. Elena gestured to the data streaming beside her. We're helping to restore a world that your people poisoned. The Ziyari aren't just surviving now, they're thriving. Look at the readings. The Assembly's decision was made centuries ago. Another delegate, a serpentine Naxian, hissed. The Ziyari were deemed unworthy of inclusion in galactic society. Their technological development was insufficient, because they chose to develop in harmony with their world instead of conquering it. Elena countered, because they focused on sustainability instead of weapons. Tell me, how is your own world faring after millennia of industrial expansion? The Naxian delegate recoiled slightly. It was a well-known fact that their homeworld was now largely artificial, the natural environment having been sacrificed for technological advancement. This goes beyond the Ziyari. A third delegate spoke, her ethereal form shifting like smoke. Your actions challenge the very foundations of assembly authority. If word of this spreads to other abandoned worlds, then maybe it should. Elena interrupted. Maybe it's time for the galaxy to learn that advancement doesn't have to mean destruction. The Ziyari have something to teach all of us, if we're willing to learn. A new voice joined the conversation. Vea, speaking from the surface through a comlink. We do not seek conflict. We never have. But we will not be abandoned again. Humanity has shown us that compassion is not weakness, and that different paths to advancement can exist together. The delegates murmured among themselves. Elena could see the younger race's representatives looking thoughtful, while the older ones seemed increasingly agitated. This is your final warning, Zixix declared. Withdraw your ship and personnel immediately, or we will be forced to take action. Elena squared her shoulders. No. The word hung in space like a challenge. On her tactical display, Elena saw the assembly ship's weapons powering up fully. If you fire on us, she said calmly, you'll be attacking an Earth vessel engaged in humanitarian aid. Are you ready for that diplomatic crisis? Because every second of this is being recorded and transmitted back to Earth. You would risk interstellar war for these primitives. Zixix demanded. We would risk it to do what's right, Elena replied. And we're not alone. As if on cue, new signals appeared on the radar. Ships were emerging from FTL travel. Earth ships, dozens of them. Elena hadn't requested them, but it seemed Admiral Chen had understood the stakes better than she'd realized. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. A new voice cut through the tension. We've come to support our people in their humanitarian mission. I suggest we all take a moment to discuss this situation more diplomatically. The Assembly delegates' expressions shifted from anger to calculation. The arrival of the Earth fleet had changed the equation. A direct conflict would no longer be a simple show of force against one ship. Perhaps, the smoky delegate said carefully, we have been hasty in our approach to this situation. The Assembly would be willing to reevaluate the Ziyari's status, another added, clearly reading the shifting political winds. Under certain conditions. Elena felt a smile tugging at her lips. I'm sure we can arrange a full cultural exchange. After all, the Ziyari's environmental engineering clearly qualifies as advanced technology. It's just advanced in a different direction than you expected. The negotiations that followed lasted for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The assembly, faced with the choice between admitting error or risking a major diplomatic incident, chose adaptation. They would recognize the Ziyari, establish formal relations with Earth, and most importantly, allow the restoration project to continue. As the assembly ships withdrew and the Earth fleet took up protective positions around Kepler 247, Alina received a private message from Vea. The Ziyari leader's image showed her standing in what had been a dead field that morning. Behind her, green shoots were pushing through the newly healed soil. "Your people risked everything for us," Vea said softly. "We will not forget." Alina looked at the transformation happening below, then at the Earth ships standing guard above. "We're not done yet," she replied. "This is just the beginning of what we can achieve together." 5 years after the confrontation in Kepler's orbit, Captain Alina Santos stood once again in the plaza of the Ziyari city. But this time, she didn't need an environmental suit. Above her, the sky shone a clear, pale purple, cleansed of its toxic shroud. Around her, the ancient ruins had been transformed into a thriving metropolis that blended the old with the new. "It still takes my breath away," Admiral Chen said, walking beside her. He had come personally to oversee the graduation of the first class of Ziyari students from the Joint Earth-Ziyari Academy of Environmental Sciences. "Everything they build works in harmony with their world," Alina replied, watching as a group of Ziyari children played with human ones in a garden that seemed to glow with its own light. The Ziyari's translucent skin now pulsed with healthy colors, their natural ability to process environmental energy fully restored. Vea approached them, no longer the frail leader of a dying race, but a respected ambassador to both Earth and the Assembly. "The ceremony will begin soon," she said, her voice musical. "Many eyes will be watching." Indeed, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for this event. The success of the Kepler restoration project had sent shockwaves through galactic society. The Assembly's older races had been forced to confront their prejudices about what constituted advanced civilization. The ceremony took place in the Great Hall, a structure that seamlessly merged Ziyari crystal architecture with Earth engineering. As Alina took her seat among the dignitaries, she remembered the desperate days when they had fought to save this world. Now that struggle had evolved into something far more profound. The graduating class entered, a mix of Ziyari and humans who had studied together, learning to combine Earth's technological knowledge with Ziyari environmental wisdom. They represented a new kind of advancement, one that valued harmony over dominance. "When humanity found us," Vea began her address, "we were a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when civilization values progress over preservation. Now we are becoming a model for a different path forward." She gestured to the windows, where ships from various worlds could be seen landing at the new spaceport. "Representatives from 17 worlds are here today to learn our methods, worlds that, like ours, were deemed insufficient by old standards. Together with humanity, we are showing the galaxy that true advancement lies in balance, not conquest." Alina thought about how much had changed. The Ziyari's environmental technology, combined with human innovation, had already helped restore 3 other damaged worlds. More importantly, their example had inspired a movement among the galaxy's younger races, challenging the Assembly's centuries-old definitions of civilization. After the ceremony, Alina walked with Veda through the memorial garden, where a simple monument listed the names of those who hadn't lived to see their world reborn. They stopped at a new addition to the garden, a seedling from Earth, one of the first terrestrial plants successfully adapted to Kepler's environment. "Did you ever imagine this?" Vea asked, her hand gentle on the seedling's leaves. "When you first found us?" Alina shook her head. "I just knew we had to help. Everything else. This came from all of us working together." "You taught us something vital," Vea said. "Not just how to heal our world, but that sometimes the most advanced thing a civilization can do is show compassion." A group of students passed by, deep in discussion about a new project to extend the planetary healing systems to Kepler's moons. Among them was Alina's daughter, Maria, born 3 years ago, to one of the first human families to settle permanently on the planet. The assembly's old guard still grumbles, Alina noted. They say we're disrupting the natural order. Vea's laugh was like wind chimes. Perhaps it needed disrupting. Look there. She pointed to where Delegate Zixix's son was working alongside Zayari engineers, his crystalline features animated as they discussed a new environmental restoration technique. Change comes, whether we plan it or not. Better to guide it with wisdom and compassion than resist it with fear. As the twin sons of Kepler said, casting the city in shades of gold and purple, Alina received a priority message from Earth Command. More worlds were asking for help, seeking to learn the Zayari way of living in harmony with their environments. Some were assembly worlds, their people tired of endless expansion at the cost of their planet's health. We'll need to train more teams, Alina said, already planning. We will help, Vea assured her. It is our way to return kindness with kindness. Humanity stepped up when all others turned away. Now we step up together. Elena looked out over the city where two civilizations had become one, where children of different species played together under clear skies, and where ancient wisdom and new technology worked in harmony. This was humanity's true legacy among the stars, not conquest or domination, but the simple, powerful choice to help those in need. The galaxy was changing, one restored world at a time. And it had all started with a single human captain who refused to turn away from suffering, who had seen value in what others had deemed worthless. As night fell over Kepler 247, the city's bioluminescent lights came on, a testament to the power of compassion to transform not just one world, but an entire galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be truly civilized.